Hello, and welcome to Leadership Table Talk with Michelle Perdue Show. I am so honored to have Jen Ford-Reedy, the president of the Bush Foundation, joining me today as my guest. How are you, Jen?
Very good. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do as the president of the Bush Foundation?
Yeah. So the Bush Foundation is a charitable foundation. It was created with money left to the community by Archibald G. Bush, who was one of the men who built 3M into a big, successful corporation. And we're able to use that money to invest in making our region better for everyone who lives here. So we work in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and the 23 Native nations that share that geography. And our tagline is also really what we do, which is invest in great ideas and the people who power them.
Wow, that's really awesome. Now, I have to share this with my viewing audience. Jen and I met probably about a year and a half ago. I was the CEO moderator at Team Women's annual conference, and Jen was one of the panelists. And one of the things that I really admired about you, and still do, and that really resonates with me is this. I don't know if you remember me sharing this, but you were quoted in an article titled, "Foundation Head Innovates with Logic, Optimism." So before you were the actual president of the Bush Foundation, 6 years prior to that, you said, and let me make sure that I get this correctly. You said, "I know what I want to do with my life. I want to be the president of the Bush Foundation."
Yeah, I was very lucky that that worked out that way.
That is just amazing. I mean, how many people actually say what it is that they want to do and actually fulfill that dream or that vision?
Well, you know, the only reason I said that is because someone asked me. It was leaders, mentors, who pushed me to think, what really would you want to do? And there were a few people in particular who pushed me on that question in a way that really made me think, what are the verbs I want for my life? What are the things that I most want to do? What's the impact that I really want to have? And then I looked around to say, where are jobs where I would be able to do that? And that's where I thought, oh, Bush Foundation. The Bush Foundation is a place where I could have that impact that I really want to have. And it's a crazy in the story that it actually worked out, that I got the job with the Bush Foundation. But even if I hadn't, going through that exercise of thinking, what's that impact I want to have? What's the change that I want to be? And thinking about what that could look like, helped me make a lot of other decisions that got me in a position to where I was able to get this job as president of the Bush Foundation. But if it hadn't been this job, I would have been able to get other positions that would have allowed me or gotten me closer to that impact that I wanted to have. So I think I wasn't smart enough on my own to think about doing that sort of imagining exercise for myself.
But you say that, Jenna, but I mean,
it was the effect others had on me, which I'm saying mostly to say that's the effect you can have on others, you know, for any of us to push the people we care about, you know, to think, what is it you want to do?
Right, but I just want you to own what it is that the role that you played. I mean, it's
Well, thank
easy
you.
sometimes to say that other people was, they inspired me to go that direction, and a lot of times that's the case, but it sounds like, just listening to you, that you were very strategic in aligning yourself up to become the president of the Bush Foundation. So yes, people may have influenced your decision and kind of guided you towards that direction, but I want you to give yourself credit where credit is due.
Well, thank you, but I did it. I mean, for the first part of my career, my decisions were wholly on what sounds amazing to do. It was wholly on what job sounds challenging and interesting and what would I like to do. And so I would say I was not very strategic in the early part of my career.
Oh, interesting.
And it wasn't that, when I say I wasn't smart enough, it's that I didn't have in myself the insight of, I need to change how I'm thinking about my career. It was other people calling that out of me.
And then
that's
you acted
and then I
upon
did
that.
act upon it. But now when I think about career advice for other people, I'm coaching them on something that I felt like I was lucky enough to stumble into or have help getting to. But I think every job sounds interesting to me. I am interested in lots of things,
Sure.
and so I could very easily have actually had a career that sort of went here and here and here, and loved every job, but not necessarily have had a sense of what's that dream job for me. And so as there are 20 things that look exciting to me at any moment, how do I choose that one that gets me closer to that dream job?
Sure.
Because I was strategic, but I never made choices to do things that I didn't want to do or that I didn't, in and of itself, think was a great job for me or a place I could make a difference. But I made choices that got me closer to that dream job at the same time.
Okay. Then I want to segue from that. Just making choices.
Yeah.
That's going to lead me to what our topic is today, which is the key to managing up for leadership success. Now, I have to tell you, when I read your blog on the bushfoundation.org's website, and when I came across managing up, it really stuck out for me because it wasn't a term that I had heard of very often. I know a lot of times in terms of leadership, we focus on the leadership and how effective is the leader. Are they able to bring the vision to reality? Are they people oriented? And we think of all these things in terms of a leader and making sure that a leader is effective in terms of connecting with their people. But we seldom think about the follower. And I want to use that term loosely, and you really helped me with that, because before we started this interview today, I had an idea of what a follower was. And we talked about how, if you really want to be effective and if you really want to get from where you are to where it is you want to be, it's really important not to just view yourself as a follower. You really have to expand and have a more open-minded way of thinking in terms of getting what you want or to get to where you want to be. So can you talk a little bit about the concept? Let's start with the concept of managing up. What exactly does that mean? Because I know some people may not know what that is.
Yeah. So building upon the leadership follower conversation we are having, I mean, in every relationship you have, whether at work or in personal life or anywhere, there's some amount of leading and some amount of following that both people in that relationship do. And in any relationship, if you are only a follower, you are probably not optimizing that relationship and the potential in that relationship. So when you think about it at work, if you're only viewing yourself as the person who is doing what they are told, you are probably not taking advantage of the power you actually have to shape your work and to shape the organization around you. And you're probably making it harder actually for the person who is managing you if you're putting all of the leadership burden on your manager. That there's a way for, in any work relationship, but particularly when it's you and a person who's supervising you, to think about how do we make each other successful? Because their success is based on your success, and your success is based on their success.
Absolutely.
How do you think about that dynamic, and what's each of your role in leading and following to make that relationship as successful as possible?
Absolutely. And you're right, you do give up so much of your power if you have that type of mentality.
Absolutely.
Because you're completely looking to that other person for your happiness.
Absolutely.
You're looking towards that person to influence or change the trajectory of your career, when in reality, you will always have that power to do so.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes we need, as leaders and as people, to be reminded of that.
Yeah,
Right?
I think that's exactly right. I think, I see with some regularity colleagues in organizations where they are processing professional situations mostly in terms of what is being done to them. And is this an environment that works for me? Sort of like judging, in some ways, assessing what's around them, as opposed to thinking, what's the power I have to work in the way that I want to work, to change this place that I am working, to develop relationships, partnerships with people across the organization that make me more successful, make them more successful, make the organization more successful, and make this more of a place that I feel comfortable and I want to be successful.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And as I listen to you, it just reminds me of how much accountability and responsibility that we have as individuals for our own success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You can always be in situations that are truly lousy, right? You can have a boss who is a jerk.
Right.
You can be in an organization that is truly chaotic and dysfunctional, right? And you alone in using, clever techniques to manage up are not going to fix those situations. That's different. But in most work environments, where people are trying hard, to make an organization work, for the organization to be as successful as it can be, you need everybody in there thinking, what effect am I having on others? How am I making other people's jobs easier? How am I contributing to the success of this organization? And when everybody's doing that, you have this amazing, really mutual management that's going on that makes an organization so much greater than the sum of its parts.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now I just want to move on and talk about some of the points that you mentioned in your blog. You gave 6 points, but today we're going to talk about 3.
Okay.
3 of those points. And one of the ways to managing up for leadership success, you talked about bringing solutions.
Yeah.
Bringing solutions. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah. So the core idea is, when there's an issue to be resolved, a question on the table, do you go to your manager and say, what should we do? Or do you go and say, I think we should do this? Or even if you don't know, go and say, I think we should do A, B, or C, and here's why. That makes a giant difference in the possibility of success for both of you. For you, it's a way of embracing the power you actually have to shape the direction of the organization. If you have an opinion, you should put it out there, right? That's your chance. And maybe it gets shot down, that's fine, but you have a chance to actually help set the direction for the organization by leading with a solution. For the supervisor, it's so much easier to respond to a suggestion than it is to say, okay, wait, I haven't thought about this. How do I think through all these things? The pressure is suddenly on that person to try to do all the problem solving themselves on the spot, as opposed to, responding to a solution that's brought to them. So it's, to me, one of the key strategies to make the supervisor, whoever you're reporting to, make their job a lot easier and make the experience of working with you a lot easier, and a way for you to play a much greater role in shaping your own destiny.
Right. Because you're essentially making it easier for them, but you're also making it easier for yourself, in the sense that you're allowing yourself to have an opportunity to express your voice, right?
Yeah.
To share your own thoughts and ideas. And when you allow yourself to do that, I think that people just generally respect you a lot more.
I think that's right.
Allow yourself to do that.
I think that's right. And I say to people I work with, I was like, if you ask me a question, I will give an answer. So be sure, do you really want to ask me a question? Or do you want to say, do you want to do this? Because if you ask, I'll think about it right there and give an answer. I might not have thought about it before. I might not care about it. Before you ask the question, try to influence how I think about it before I've done the processing for myself and landed somewhere.
Right, but Jen, what if you're in a situation to where you are a woman and your leader is a male, is a man, and you have some thoughts and ideas that you want to share that truly could make a difference, but you find that you don't want to speak up because you are fearful that your ideas might be shot down and that they won't be appreciated. So what do you do in a situation like that?
Well, you certainly try, because the fear that it might be shot down, I think if that's the thing holding you back, then you haven't done all you can do to test that limit and see what's possible, right?
So once again, it goes back to you.
Yeah, like try. And that's not to say that there aren't bosses who will just never be receptive to things. So I don't want to be too Pollyanna on that. Like that could be true. But don't let your fear of that happening prevent you from at least trying, because there are ways to do it that is just you being helpful, right? It's how you frame it. So it's saying, you know what, we have this decision coming up. I've looked into it some. This looks like to me like the right path. I considered this, this, and this. I think we should go with this path. Does that make sense to you? Like, there's nothing in that that's you imposing your idea on somebody. You are making it easier for that person to make a decision.
Right. And it sounds like you're engaging in your own learning process.
Yeah, I
You
think
know
that's
what I
true.
mean?
I think that's true.
You're taking an active approach to really bring something to the table that's of value,
Yeah.
right?
But I do think that if you are solution oriented and bring solutions, you should expect that some percentage of the time they do get shot down. And so part of that is for you holding a distinction between your value and your smarts and everything you're bringing to the table, that's different than whether or not your idea wins the day. Because there could be a lot of reasons why your idea doesn't win the day. You could bring a solution and the person says, well, I also know about this thing happening over here, so that's not going to work. There may be information you don't know. There may be a variety of reasons why your idea doesn't win the day. But that need not deter you from bringing another idea forward.
But see, Jen, where I think the problem is that a lot of times in situations like that, people tend to, and women more so than men, tend to internalize the responses that they get when it's a response that they're not particularly looking, wanting to hear, right?
Absolutely.
We tend to internalize it. We tend to take it more personally, and we make it about ourselves. When in reality, like you said, there's so many other factors at hand.
Yeah.
Maybe your boss is just simply not having a good day. Maybe it's maybe you approach them at the wrong time, right?
And I think everything you can do to kind of train yourself mentally to divorce yourself from the idea and keep those things separate is helpful. I understand that that's hard, but I also think maybe having a mindset for yourself that every idea you bring forward just plain shouldn't go through.
That's true too.
Your role is bringing it, putting it on the table, and it may or may not go, but you've done your role well, which is to present a solution that you think could be a good one for the organization, and what happens to it from there is less your control, but you've done your part as well as you can, and you can keep doing that.
And so the key, it sounds like, is just even allowing yourself to show up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we take ourselves out of the game when we don't even allow ourselves to be at the table.
Yeah.
Right? To share our thoughts and our ideas or solutions about particular issues.
I think that's true, and I don't mean to say that in a way that diminishes in any way how hard that can be.
Right.
But it's sort of recognizing it in ourselves as a development need or a development opportunity of something that we could keep working on, because there will be so many things in different work environments that make it challenging for any one of us to be successful for a whole variety of reasons.
Absolutely.
And what can you do with yourself, for yourself, to make sure as much as you can that you are not putting your own constraints on yourself and the possibilities for you and how you navigate an organization successfully.
That's a good point, because a lot of times we limit our own selves.
We do.
We
do.
are
We do
our
it all the time.
worst enemy.
Yep.
Right? So let's move on to the next tip. Be clear about what you need.
This is really about helping other people be helpful. I mean, assuming again that the person who's managing you is not just a horrible person, they want to be helpful. Their job is in part to help you be successful. So being clear about what's useful helps in that supervisor relationship a lot. If you can go in and say, look, I'm not ready to make a decision on this yet, but I'd just like to talk through some ideas. Or say, right now we haven't gotten to this decision or this decision yet, but right now I need a decision just on this one thing, and I need it from you now.
Right.
But making it clear what you need from people. And again, this is to supervisors, but it's to anybody you work with in the organization. Are you really, really clear at what you need? If you send an email that says, will you take a look at this and give me feedback? But you don't say what kind of feedback and when, and, then you're not making it easy for someone to give you what you need. So the more specific you can be about, like, I need counsel on this, I need a decision on this, I need, set them up to be successful at how they are managing you.
And Jen, sometimes also, I think it's not just about being clear about what it is that you need. I think that's part of it, but I think sometimes it's just the language that we are not comfortable with. Even saying the word I need, right?
Yeah.
Saying that you need is allowing yourself to have a voice for yourself.
Yeah,
it's
that's
allowing yourself to advocate for what it is that you want. And quite frankly, not everyone is comfortable being able to talk to someone and just say, this is what I need. That in and of itself. And I think that that's something that as people, as aspiring leaders, is something that we have to address head on, and to be very self-conscious, not self-conscious, but very self-aware about, in terms of the language that we use, and it all goes back to feeling as if you are worthy. Yeah. Feeling as if it is okay, giving yourself permission to want certain things and to have other people to have your best interest at hand. Because how can other people help you if they don't know what the need or the help is?
No, I think that's right. And there are a lot of situations where you can actually phrase it in a way that doesn't make you feel as exposed that way, to say, in order to keep this project on track, we'll need to have this approved by, you can massage language sometimes, but there are times when it is really about what you need. Like, you need somebody to talk through something with you. You need somebody to make sure you understand, something else that's going on in the organization. And I think there's a way of doing that with a humility that comes through to people, so that it's not viewed as anything but you trying to help the organization and help others do what they need to do to be successful. Because it is a recognition that for the organization to be successful, it needs you to be successful.
Absolutely. That's true.
And if you're not asking for the things that you need in your job, however you frame it, then you're not going to be successful, and you're not going to be the contributor that the organization needs you to be. So I think this could be another way where you think about some of the baggage that women tend to carry, although men may carry this too, but this idea of not wanting it to be about me, not wanting to be a burden or a problem, or there are all kinds of things that can make that difficult. And I think for me, it's always easier than to think about how it will have a positive effect on other people. And that's just true in all these cases. Anything that will help you be more successful in your job is about more than you. It is about the other people around you, and it is about the organization. If you can get over that and think, I'm doing this for me, for the organization, then that, I think, for me and maybe for some others, helps get over that feeling about making it too much about myself.
Right. And I think just in general, when you make it more than yourself, then you take so much burden off of your shoulders. You really do. Just about the same thing applies to speaking. I'm a speaker, and a lot of times when I coach other women on their presentation skills, and we talk about the feeling of nervous or having speaking anxiety, I remind people how important it is to think about the needs of your audience.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
as speakers, we can be
Yeah.
so selfish, and not that we like to see ourselves in that light, but the truth of the matter is we spend so much time focusing on ourselves and worrying about what
Yeah.
other people are thinking
Yeah.
about us.
Yeah.
When in reality, you have to ask yourself, what is your why?
Yeah.
Why are you there? Why are you
Yeah.
speaking, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when that audience leaves that room, they should have a different mindset. They should be changed in some
Yeah.
way, shape, or form. So you're right in that regards. Make it
Yeah.
bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's leadership thinking, right? Because to me, leadership is fundamentally what's the effect you're having on other people. I mean, you can have a leadership role, which means you get to be the one making decisions, like a formal leadership role. But if you mean leadership as the verb, like leading people, it is about an effect that you're having on other people. How you are moving and inspiring and helping, supporting other people to do something that they may not have done without your leadership. And that's part of that mindset. And that's where, you know, in the blog that you referenced, I've come to think about the skills around managing up as core skills for leadership development, because it's getting in that mindset that it's not about me. It's about my effect on other people. And that's the real definition of leadership and the real big sort of opportunity for each one of us to have in thinking about our impact. Did that make sense?
Yeah. It did make sense.
Oh.
So now I want to talk about the third tip that you offer. Don't take feedback as final until it is.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, this is one where I will hear regularly people say, well, we're doing this because Jen said we should do this. And I'm like, wait, what?
Right.
I don't remember ever saying that.
Right.
And maybe I did, but I don't like it didn't mean it didn't even mean enough to me that I recall it. You know, that be careful that when you're listening to leaders express opinions or suggest things, that they really mean it as direction. Because a lot of times, if you bring something and say, what do you think we should do? And someone says, well, this, you know, maybe they haven't thought about it that much. They're just giving you an answer to what's gone on. That need not be the direction. You have the opportunity to come back and say, I know you said this. I've been thinking about it more and wondering, what do you think about this possibility instead? And like everything we're talking about with managing up, it's about helping each other be successful, right? So one part of not taking feedback as final until it is making sure that you keep your power to direct the work in the way that you think it actually should be directed. And the way you're helping the person you're reporting to is by not letting them do something stupid.
Right.
You know, like that's my greatest fear actually now as the leader, that I say something and people do it, even if they think it's a bad idea. I mean, that's not good for anybody. Now, if I'm like defiant and say, you must do this, then that's a different situation. But if I just say, oh, you know, I think that should be blue, and you know, blue's a terrible idea.
Exactly.
Don't let that happen. You know, make sure that if it's something that you have conviction about, that you find a way to come back and say, can we talk about that again? Because I've thought more about it, and now I'm wondering about green. You know,
Exactly.
Green could be a really good option here, and give yourself that opportunity. Give both of each other, both of you in the relationship, that opportunity to revisit if it's something that you don't think is the right direction.
And see, Jen, I think that when we don't honor that conviction, I think that's when we run into trouble.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where we feel as if we are up against a wall and we lose our power, when we don't allow ourselves to share what it is that we feel passionate about, right? And when and when we don't honor that, we start to lose our passion, and then that's when in turn we start to hate our job. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
And it's hard to be good at the job when you're thinking that way too, because if you only get in the mindset of, I'm just trying to understand what other people want to do and do it, then you're not adding the value that you can add in that job. Because there are things in any job that you are the only person who knows. You are looking at whatever's going on in an organization from a perspective that only you have. And you have answers for the organization that no one else has.
Right.
And making sure that you don't get into that dynamic where you are diminishing the value of your perspective and your experience and your expertise from the position that you are in, because that's the point at which you are not making the most of your job and you're not helping others then in the organization to have the organization's work go as well as it can.
Wonderful. And I think that's a great way to end.
All right.
Don't diminish your value.
Yeah.
We talked about so many great things today, and I just want to go over the 3 tips that we talked about. We talked about bring solutions, be clear about what you need, and don't take feedback back as final until it is. Yeah. Now, these are 3 speaking tips, but 3 tips that you talked about, but there's also 3 additional tips that you talk about in your blog. And I just want to give our viewers an opportunity to go and read those other tips, because I think that they are very helpful.
Oh, thanks.
As well. And if you go to www.bushfoundation.org, you'll be able to find those other tips. So I want to thank you again, Jen. It was such a pleasure having you here today, and I really hope that you come back.
Thanks.
I'd
Thanks.
love
It
to
was
see
very
you.
fun.
Wonderful. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.